Well, if you are married, thinking about getting married, engaged, and even single and wanting to desperately get married, then this is the show for you. Because I have popular marriage blogger, pastor, and author Kevin Thompson with me to talk about the three vital roles of marriage: friends, partners, and lover. It's an amazing conversation as he shares with me his thoughts about the number one cause for divorce, which will surprise you, that marriage takes work and intention, and most marriages live in apathy and laziness. This is the show for anybody who is wanting to work hard on their relationships, marriage. You won't want to miss it. Well, hello, Kevin Thompson, all the way from Fort Smith, Arkansas. I have to have this little twang when I say it, Kevin, via Skype. I love that you're here with me. Thanks for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Now, Kevin, what's fascinating, you're the author of a new book, Friends, Partners, and Lovers, What It Takes to Make Your Marriage Work. But what I'm fascinated about is that you have this answer that surprised me about the number one cause of divorce, which shocked me because I had all these other ideas, but you actually say it's something completely different. Tell me about that.
Yeah, everybody assumes the number one cause of divorce is adultery or money issues, a lack of communication, something like that. But I think that's wrong. I think those are symptoms of the true cause. I think the number one cause of divorce is a lack of intention. Whenever we fall in love, it feels like it happens so naturally. But what we don't understand is then it takes work to keep it going. And what tends to happen is that couples don't understand the intention required for that relationship. They fail to put in the work to stay connected as friends, to figure out what it means to be partners, to understand what their spouse needs in the intimacy area. And through that apathy, whether it be intentional at times or unintentional, through that apathy, they tend to drift apart. And then one of those symptoms begins to take them down. It's only adultery is a lack of intention with healthy boundaries, or a lack of intention of understanding what our spouse needs. Money problems is a lack of intention with budgeting or understanding how to spend money. So what people tend to believe causes divorce actually doesn't. Facebook doesn't cause divorce. A lack of intention in keeping a healthy friendship and healthy boundaries, that's what causes divorce.
So it's really key about this intentionality of the work that goes into a marriage, is what you're saying.
In every aspect, every single day, you have to do the work necessary to have the marriage that you want.
That's so interesting, because I think we always look at the sort of symptoms and what happens as the issue, but then actually if you go back and go deeper, you realize, you're saying the lack of intention, apathy. You also mentioned things like laziness and just not wanting to do the work, which, you know what, I admit there are days that I'm like that. I'm actually lazy. I don't want to do the work. It's hard work being other-centered, selfless. I want to be selfish, right? I want to just sit on the couch and watch HGTV and not clean or cook or be in a thoughtful conversation with my husband. You know what I mean?
No question.
And I think that
I think so much of it comes from. I'm sorry. I think so much of it comes from also at times a misunderstanding about what marriage is all about.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about in the book how we buy into this cultural idea of a soulmate. Well, if somebody was created specifically for you and they are your perfect fit, then it makes total sense that whenever you find them, the work is done because they're perfect for you. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that's not the biblical description of marriage. It's not the reality of marriage. And so because this other person isn't perfect for you, because in reality it's two sin-filled people now trying to live their lives together, clearly that's going to take effort. And so there's times in which couples show a lack of intention, not with ill will and not even toward laziness, but just understanding the very nature of living in life that is truly worth it, that you don't work for in some way, that doesn't create or demand some kind of effort. And marriage is that way too.
Kevin, this kind of topic or book has to come from your own sort of personal experience and to kind of get the story behind the story or the book. Talk to me about that, your own marriage, your sort of discovery in these things as far as, putting this together and saying, this has worked for me in my own marriage or not, and how this came about.
Yeah, so much of this book comes from, my wife and I have been married 17 years, and it comes from just a basic concept here of what is it that I'm supposed to do? I love this woman, and I want to be married to her, and I want to have a marriage that lasts. You know, I came from my parents, their marriage didn't make it, and so I have that brokenness in my life. I had grandparents that were married for 70 years, and so they were the couple I really wanted to model after. And so I began to ask, what is it that made their relationship work so much? What is it that maybe my parents struggled with to some extent? But then in the midst of my own marriage, what is it that I need to be for my wife? And so in part, I would say that this book is a job description of what a healthy marriage looks like. And it narrows it down to the most basic of concepts. That if you can just do work within this framework and then take on your own personality, and marriages look different for different people, but these basic qualities I think have to be present in every marriage for it to be healthy. And so that's kind of where it was born from my experience. And I have a website, kevinathompson.com. I began to write there, test out these ideas. People begin to ask for this more in a book form. And the great thing about that is my wife is my editor. So there is nothing that I have written. Today's my wife's birthday. I wrote an article on my website in honor of her. But to be honest with you, I published one article. I wrote two. She didn't like the first one. And so I said, okay, I'm not going to publish it. And so that's the great thing here. Whenever you read this, it has my name on the cover, but she's approved everything that's in this book. And so we have really worked through it. And this isn't an idea of we have it figured out. Instead, this is an idea of we have struggled like everybody else, and we're trying to figure it out. And what we have learned is that we think from a biblical concept, these three elements have to be present.
Kevin, there's the 3 points that you say to make a marriage work, or to, what it takes to make your marriage work. And that's friends, partners, and lovers. So friendship, partnership, and being a lover. Let's talk about that, because friendship is something that I do hear in some of my friends' relationships, and others I don't hear about the friendship part. And you actually say that that's one of the most important of the 3 rules, which I was
I think that's where it all starts.
Yeah,
I think
so
that's the
talk
foundation.
to me about that. Yeah, the foundation is friendship.
And you think about it from a first date standpoint, from early on in a relationship, what is it that you're doing? You're trying to figure out, do I like this person? Do I enjoy them? Am I intrigued by them? There's no doubt that there is an attraction component that's at work. But then beyond that, you're just trying to figure out, can I stand her voice or his voice and their personality and their sense of humor? And is it there? And what do they like? Relationships begin with friendship. And it's so important. I think that's where a marriage that's the foundation. I think in many ways, if you think about it like a house, that there's the foundation is marriage, the walls are partnership, and then the roof is intimacy. And if that foundation is weak, then you're going to struggle in so many ways. But what I see happens so many times is a relationship begins with a strong friendship. They get married and the intimacy really begins to pick up. And as the demands of life come upon them, and they're having to play the role of the partner, raising kids, having work, paying bills, the friendship gets pushed to the side. And before long, what people don't realize is that they're beginning to drift apart. That yes, they interact with each other on who's going to pick up the kids. And yes, they still have intimate moments. But that heart-to-heart connection of truly being a best friend. I say that you don't have to be each other's only friend by any means, but you do need to be their best friend, the first person they call in the good times and the bad. What happens so often in the busyness of life is the first thing to slide away in the midst of a lack of intention is that friendship. And what's so scary to me is it happens without us seeing it. We don't even recognize it until we're too far down the path to where we realize we've kind of drifted apart. And so I would say that the number one thing that your viewers can do right now to better their marriage is to strengthen their friendship. If they will do that, it will have a ripple effect, I think, in every other aspect of their lives.
Kevin, what kind of easy tips would there be it sounds so funny, like, be a good friend, and I have to be intentional about that. But like, what are some, just maybe 1 or 2 easy tips that you can start if you're like, maybe I'm not a friend to my spouse? What can you do?
Take a walk. That's the easiest thing. Yeah. It really is the easiest thing, because what happens when I love the image of a walk, because you're walking side by side. Whenever I think about these 3 dynamics, friendship, partnership, and then love or intimacy, I think friends are walking through life hand in hand. It means whenever I have a friend, it means I always have somebody by my side. Partnership, these are 2 people standing back to back. You're watching out for one another. I have your back. And then intimacy is we're staring at each other and we see the fullness of who each other is, weaknesses and all, and yet we love each other no matter what. And so whenever I think about friendship, I think you walk side by side. And I think one of the easiest things to do there is to take a walk. Go downtown, stroll the streets, break away, just the two of you, from the busyness of life, from all the demands that are there. Be doing something. So you're engaging, you're interacting. Men are far more likely to talk, by the way, when they're side by side instead of face to face. Women tend to talk eye to eye. Men tend to talk side by side. Think about two men in a golf cart, two men in a fishing boat, two men in a hunting blind. They're never looking at each other, but they're talking continuously. So I think if a couple will simply take a 30-minute walk 3 times a week, you will begin to see, I know more about my partner. I understand more about what's going on in her life. I think more about her, what's happening. I understand what he's feeling. So the simplest prescription I would have to strengthen your friendship is to simply take a walk.
That's good. Now, moving on to partnership, because I think this is an interesting role, like partnership. What does that mean? And especially in what I'm learning is, partnership as I go to work and to be a partner in life. I mean, I'm a stepmom, so I've got, 2 wonderful kids that have come in, and I work full time in media, and Chris, my husband, works full time too. And so explain about partnership and how to build that. I get my head around the friendship, but you say being a partner is just as important too to make a marriage work. What does that mean and look like in a healthy way as well?
Yeah, I think for Jenny and I, what has happened here is whenever we first got married, we understood friendship was part of it. We were dating, we were friends. We understood that being lovers was going to be part of it. And the intimacy was there. We were looking forward to that. I think what surprised me the most about marriage now 17 years in is the partnership and how much fun that has been. And for us, it has really defined our 30s. I'm just a few months away from leaving my 30s. And for us, that has defined this section of life. And it's been a great deal of fun. And now no doubt there's a business side to it. Partnership is the unsexy aspect of marriage. And yet, it used to be that partnership was all marriage was about. It was about a land deal, a transaction. What can you gain through a relationship? And thankfully, we've moved away from that. But that hasn't taken away the concept of partnership. It's still there. If you doubt that, as you know, get divorced. And then you understand this person affects my credit score, and you have to unwind everything. And so clearly partnership is an important aspect. And so for me, it's everything from raising kids to earning money. But then ultimately, I think once you take care of those basic concepts, partnership in the end becomes, I'm by your side. I want you to succeed. And I'm doing everything in my power now to assist you. Imagine, one thing I talk about all the time to couples is Jenny and I try to do this as much as we can. We try to, as we're leaving throughout the day, I simply say, what's one thing I can do for you today? Now, doesn't guarantee that I can do it for her, but what that does is it gives me an insight. How stressed is she? What's on her plate? What's something I can alleviate from that? She does the same thing for me. That's a partnership. It means I have somebody who's watching out for me, who wants to make my life easier, and then ultimately wants to make it better. Maybe my favorite chapter in the book is in this partnership section. And after getting through the drudgery of the partnership of you have to earn money and pay bills and raise kids, there's this chapter that culminates in this idea that partnership at its best is how can I make your dreams come true?
That's good.
What is it that you want? And now I'm going to encourage you and almost push you to make your dreams come true. I always dreamed of having a book. Why do I have a book? Because my wife made it happen. Because she said, this is a dream of yours and it's time to make this happen. You need to go to your room and write. And then after you write, I'm going to edit it. I'm going to correct it. We're going to make it better. And we're going to start this process. And so in the end, good partners are helping to create the lives that we want. And it ultimately is about making our dreams come true.
That's amazing. And Kevin, there's so much about this intentionality and work that goes in that. It's about being in the other person's lives, knowing their dreams so that you can cheer them on. It's not being on the outside, like looking in. It's being a part of them as much as they are with you. And I think a lot of people miss that, right? I mean, that intimacy, not from a physical standpoint, but the intimacy of really knowing a person and what makes them tick and their dreams. I really like that. That's powerful.
You know what intimacy is in the end? Intimacy is just this idea of I see you. That's what intimacy truly is. I see you. I understand an aspect of who you are, of what you're struggling with, of what excites you, those kind of things. And obviously, we can take that into a bedroom kind of format of lover. But intimacy is more than that. It's more than sex. It is this concept of I'm known and loved and appreciated. And so you're right. You cannot be a good partner unless you see your spouse and understand what's taking place. And that's an aspect of friendship. It involves into partnership, and ultimately it affects what it means to be lovers.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I mean, the segue into, I think one of the discussions I've had with my girlfriends and others and emails and things I've gotten from people is, what happens when you've lost that love and feeling? So that comes up in your book about, you've lost or losing that lover aspect of your marriage. And that's important. I think for women too. I mean, there's seasons and changes in our bodies and you can start blaming on that. Like I'm hitting perimenopause or menopause, so things are changing. But I've seen the destruction and what's happened when you've used girlfriends of mine have used that excuse not to be intimate, and their marriage has broken. And so I'd love to, you to share about that, because again, a lot of people don't talk in that way. I think sometimes at the church we don't talk honestly about the lover side, because if people get uncomfortable, but I think that's so important that we need honest, Christian faith-based, talks and conversations like this to talk honestly about this part. So what do we do? People are saying we've got friendship, we've got partnership, but this third part we're really struggling with and we've lost it. How do we get that back?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you need to maybe diagnose it properly to make sure. It's easy to say, oh, yeah, we're good friends. But then you get to the heart of it, and really maybe she doesn't feel that way. He feels that way. She doesn't feel that way. Yeah. And then it's going to ripple over into that. So I think you have to diagnose it properly. And then if it comes down to, we are good friends and we do have a good partnership. And then the intimacy is what is truly lacking. Then I think in many ways, one aspect you can do is you can get help. Have some humility to go to a counselor and just say, it used to be really good, but now we have kids or teenagers. Now we're struggling in this area. We have body image issues. Obviously, chemically, some things can change throughout times. Sometimes the woman desires it more than the man. And how do you work through those issues? So this is an area in which couples should be quick, I think, to get help, to get assistance. But there's also some minor things that I think that they can do to assist it within their own relationship. And the number one thing is to simply talk. Too many couples, we talk too much to our girlfriends about sex and not enough to our husbands about sex. We talk too much in the locker room to the guys about sex and not enough to our wives about it. And I understand it. It is so vulnerable and so personal. And so I don't think you should talk about it in the bedroom. Don't talk about it. But instead, whenever you're taking your walk, have this be the topic. And begin to refresh. What is it when it goes right? What is it that makes it go right? When it goes wrong, what is it that makes it go wrong? What is it that you desire? I hear couples all the time. They have differing drives. Well, in reality, whenever you sit down and talk to them, all right, how many times a week are you really looking for? And you ask both of them, they're not that far apart. And so in many of these issues, if you can get a couple to truly talk with each other, then it's good. But this can be a difficulty. If you're not good friends, if there's not a trust that is there, I think whenever it comes to friendship, it's about trust. If that trust is not present, then you're going to have a difficult time talking about sex. If you're not good partners, I think partnership is about respect. If that respect isn't present, then suddenly the intimacy becomes about one using the other. That's going to be a very dangerous kind of concept. And so I think this is an area, one reason that couples tend to need to get help a little bit faster than others, because it is so personal and it involves so many other aspects of their relationship. So I would say read the third section of this book. If things don't get better, call a counselor, go sit down, and my guess within 3 or 4 sessions, they can begin to make some improvements to assist you in this area.
Kevin, that's amazing advice. I wonder how come we don't get this advice before we get married? Like you're seeing divorces happen and broken relationships. And I feel that we've set people up for this fairy tale marriage idea that isn't the true picture. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like something's gone amiss. Either we're not getting people ready or in reality of what marriage is. And I even talked to some of my single friends. I'm like, the grass isn't always greener, if you don't work on it. Being single too is great. There's great opportunities being single. Even biblically, there's the case for being single. So why do you think that is? Because I feel a little, not just distraught, because I think a book like yours is so needed and should be in every church and with every, person that's married. But what do you think's happened as far as our idea of marriage and why we're seeing still the breakdown of marriages, even within the church as well?
Yeah, well, I first of all, some marriages just aren't going to make it. And we just have to understand that. And we're sin-filled people, no doubt. Why it takes two people to make a marriage work, one person can end it. And so in no way would I ever want to guilt or to say, well, if y'all would have just worked harder or shown intention, your relationship would have been there. I don't want to say that at all. But from a general concept, with the young couples that I end up marrying, as we begin to talk, they've bought into false premises. They bought into the false premises of the soulmate, that this person is going to be perfect, so I don't have to do anything. Or in many ways, they bought into the false premise of, well, it's just a flip of a coin. 50% of all marriages end in divorce, they say. That's not a true stat, but they say that. So it's just a flip of a coin. So it doesn't matter what I do. This may or may not work out. And so they end up not doing anything. Mm-hmm. And so I think if couples would come in with this basic concept, you can go back to the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the poor in spirit. If they would begin with that concept, I don't have a clue what I'm doing, but I love you and I'm going to learn and I'm going to do everything in my power to make this work. If they will come in with that type of humility and then work at it with intention, their chances of divorce will diminish. They won't disappear, but they will go down much further. But I think instead what tends to happen is couples think, well, we fell in love easily, and so clearly we'll stay in love easily. And it just doesn't happen that way.
Were you surprised that when you started your blog, and your website, that it was, you're writing about leadership, and then as you started, writing about marriage, just this past year, you had 10 million views collectively on your articles. Did that surprise you that there was such an appetite for help in marriage or advice on marriage, even more than, say, leadership?
Shocked. I never set out to be a marriage writer. I thought I'm not a counselor. I'm a pastor, so clearly I deal with relationships in every area. But I set out to write about leadership. Jenny and I have a child with special needs. To write about that. To write about communication. I love decision making. Wanted to write about that. And literally wanted the discipline of writing. And one day I wrote an article because I didn't have any other ideas. I wrote an article on marriage that I thought was so simple. It wasn't a big deal, and all these people read it. Wow. And I thought, I told Jenny, we've hit on something. And so every Wednesday after that, I began to write on marriage. And by far, that is the most viewed day for the website. And suddenly, this is now what I'm spending a lot of time speaking on and writing about and thinking through. Never intended to be that in any way whatsoever. But what I think is useful here is I have counselors that are far smarter than me that give me good information. They are the true experts in these kind of areas. But what am I? I am a common man who's in a relationship, who's trying to make it work, who loves her more than anything, and yet I understand how many mistakes I make. And then I see all these relationships across the spectrum of what's going on. So what I think that I can do as a pastor is I can just speak into the common experience. And this is just basic truth that is generally true for all people. And so I've been shocked by it, but I've enjoyed it.
As a pastor, and, obviously for both of us that we have, faith in Jesus, how important is that in a marriage? I mean, there are some people that are watching, they're sort of, we have a spectrum and journey of people. Some are sort of just trying to figure out the whole Jesus thing. Some have been there and have left it. I have all kinds of people on this journey. But how important, is it to have, a marriage based on the foundation of Jesus? And if you're not there, or one of you is, how do you make that, something that is important or a focus within your marriage?
Yeah, obviously it's the lens through which I view everything. So it's difficult for me to think about marriage outside of that perspective. I don't see how people do it. I know they do, and I'm grateful for that. But for me, it's everything from the standpoint of marriage. For me, ultimately, is about the transformation of my own sin-filled heart. It's the avenue that God is going to use, one of them, but probably the best avenue that God is going to use to reveal my sinfulness to me. I often say you don't know how much of a sinner you are until you're married, and then maybe until you have kids.
Yes.
Because I can fake it the rest of the time. If I meet you, we can have coffee and everything would be great. And about the time I get kind of tired and maybe frustrated and agitated, we can leave and you can think I'm great. But I can't leave my wife. And once you have a wife, then you can't retreat to your bedroom. She's there. And once you have kids, you can't even retreat to the bathroom because they're there, right?
Right.
And so suddenly you begin to see I'm much more messed up than I realized. And yet God uses that as a grace now to transform your heart. And so I think on one standpoint, marriage is so important because it is one avenue that God can use to show me my sinfulness, to show me my need for grace, to then cause me to love one another, to cause me in the small ways to humble myself as Christ did and to love my wife. But then I think on the other side, it's extremely important to the church as well. You know, as a pastor of a church, our church is damaged by divorce. Relationships break. We lose people that they stop going here. They turn away from God. It's no accident that Paul, in many of his letters to churches that were meeting in homes, would write about marriage at times because he knew that that small group meeting in that church is going to be awfully uncomfortable if that marriage is bad. And so marriage is important to the church in so many ways, and that it's important to the transformation of our own hearts.
Kevin, amazing. There's so much information, encouragement within your book. As you are sharing about your book, out in social media and in interviews, what's your hope? What's your hope that when people pick this up, that they come away with after they read it?
Yeah, my hope is that somebody with a good marriage picks it up and is encouraged by what they already have, and maybe will find a nugget or two to do better. My hope is that somebody in the midst of a struggling marriage will pick it up and realize, all right, before this relationship ends, we're going to give it our best effort to make it work. And that a young couple or a young individual who isn't married yet would pick it up, and that they would be saved from so many struggles and frustrations that we've experienced. And to know that, yeah, you're going to have some struggles, but there are some things you don't have to face because you have the truth already equipped within you. I think my hope, maybe more than anything, is that by me continually speaking about it, I'll be a better husband to Jenny and be the husband that she deserves.
It's amazing. The takeaway that I've just got from you, Kevin, is, that marriage is work and intentional. And, I think there's been just sort of a poke with me because there are times where I, maybe more than just a few, but just being apathetic and not wanting to work at it. Because there is that idea of now I've found the partner again and a friend and a lover, and now I don't have to do the work. We're just here. But I can see the danger if that we are not intentional about being a friend, partner, and lover. We'll go down the road and look back and go, what happened? We look at where we are now. So this is just great for me. I think as someone who's been married 9 months in a second marriage, gone through a lot of good Christian counseling and care within a community that I think is key as you go through difficulties. These are just good reminders for me on, going forward in my marriage and being very intentional about being a good friend, partner, and lover. So I love it. Thank you for this. Thank you for this book.
Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, amazing. So thanks again. And where can you get the book? Where can you get your book?
You can go on Amazon today. It's $9.42 on Amazon today. You can also go to kevinathompson.com and find it there and anywhere books are sold.
Okay, excellent. Well, Kevin Thompson, thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you, and all the best with your book. So what did you think of our story this week? Let me know in the comments below or by writing a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also find all our past episodes online at faithstrongtoday.com/yourstory.